Yeah, so look, before we get into this video, I just have to, people respond to my videos and, they reply to what they see. And I really appreciate that. Whether it's bad, if it's a reflection on me, or if it's a criticism, or if it's comment of a good way, that's fine. I let it roll off my back if it's bad. If it's good, I just pump up my ego a little bit more. But here's one of the comments that I received about one of my last videos. And it wasn't really directed as, any kind of whiteness, right? It was just to point out that it's a contradiction. It's hypocrisy. Okay. So here is the actual comment left on one of my videos. Now, this guy, whatever, I don't even want to pronounce his name. Obviously, it's not a traditional Christian name, if we can say that. It might be a Islam. Somebody let me know. Is that Islamic? Is that Middle Eastern? Is that Jewish? Whatever. I don't know. They used Bible in that, and I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not a scholar. I can pick out anything that I'm interested in, and I could post it on somebody's video and say, yeah, this is what is. I can think of a lot of direct responses to the Bible, right? To anybody's video, whether it's bad or good. Okay. So I don't really care. It doesn't bother me if somebody wants to leave he's making a generality of white people, correct? Not me in general, just the hate. I don't hate anybody. If you're a certain culture, of a certain race, you deal with it, enjoy it, live up to that racial part where you are. I don't see a problem with if whatever race or culture you come from, that you enjoy that. You shouldn't be ashamed of your color, your skin, or what geographic location that your ancestors came from. Everybody's different, right? Asian people don't look like Europeans, and Africans don't look like, Asians, and you can't wipe your face off. Can't use like bleach and deform your face to look like whatever. I don't know. It's just, sometimes it just gets, and I have to chuckle but I like to comment because it, so let's get into this. Okay. So I am, this video is older. It's kind of, it's blurry a little bit, but you can kind of get the gist of it. You're talking a video that was probably made in the mid 90s, and, they were using camcorders or whatever. Right. So you gotta look at, it's almost like getting a video of Bigfoot or Sasquatch or, some alien, right? It's always, we got the modern technology of a camera that's way more, even on our cell phones, we have more information on our cell phone data recording, whatever, than, they used to use spaceships back in the 60s or whatever. But anyways, what I want to get in this video, but just bear in mind the video is kind of blurry. It's a little bit older, and but it's the volume and the audio is fine to listen to. So yeah. So anyways, it'll coming up to the 30th anniversary on the 21st of August, and this happened roughly 30 years ago. So I'm just reacting to it. You'll hear my reaction, and obviously both sides are in error to this situation. I don't take any side to it, but I thought it would be relevant to the situation we're in nowadays with the FBI and all of what they do. And as far as human error, human mistakes, human neglect, human, whatever. So I use whatever because I got this little brain freeze sometimes. So whatever kind of fills that void. All right.
The shot the dog. They shot the dog.
Shot somebody's
A
dog.
federal agent has been shot and killed in a confrontation with a fugitive in North Idaho.
You know, the word racist itself is a good word. It means proud of your race.
We need this for one man, his wife, and his kids in a cabin?
Come on, get a grip, people.
I like it. I like, come on, man, get a grip, people. Just get it.
To die.
I just wanted to kick the door down so I could take a couple with me.
You want to know how many are still alive up there?
You know, it seems to me that people are still reactive to what goes on, you know, and I'll just keep going.
Vicky is dead.
Somebody got away with murder.
And there was blood all over the floor.
There were going to be no heroes at Ruby Ridge.
In 1971, Randy Weaver and Vicki Jordison are married in Fort Dodge, Iowa. All indications point them towards a standard Midwestern lifestyle, but the Weavers want something different.
Well, back in 1980, I guess it was, we started thinking about moving. Sarah was going to go to school, public school back in Iowa, and at the time we weren't real thrilled about that.
At that time in Iowa, parents were barred from homeschooling their children.
So when we started homeschooling our children, you were homeschooling because it was illegal in my state. I don't know if you were barred from doing it. You just did it and, you know, face the consequences later. But it wasn't too long after that we went from the worst state of homeschooling to the best state to homeschool our children. So it worked out well. My kids they weren't socially deprived. They can relate to kids their own age. They can relate to people they don't know, and they can talk to adults with no problem. They were involved in sports and activities, and they learned how they started their own business, went to college, graduated from college. So there was no difference as far as any of that goes.
Angered by what they view as a corrupt government, and with their religious views growing more outside the mainstream, the Weavers decide to live a life of isolation in the mountains.
We thought it'd be nice to move to the mountains and raise a family.
See, nowadays, they think if you want to move away, then that's racist. You don't want to stay in. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it as far as I'm concerned. I don't look at it racist. I think a lot of people want to be in one with nature. They want to be left alone. They want to enjoy, their family and what they can do. They want to live on their own back like they used to. And I don't see no problem with that.
Going out in the mountains and teach kids at home, and we were just going to do it. Prepared for about a year, got our bills paid off, sold the house, got all our ducks in a row, you might say.
In August of 1983, the Weaver family leaves Iowa and the rest of society behind and heads west.
We weren't sure exactly where we were going to go, but we figured in the Rocky Mountains somewhere.
The Weavers finally settled in northern Idaho. The small logging village of Naples has always been fertile ground for people living outside the mainstream. First, as a destination for back-to-the-earth hippies. Then in the 80s, the Weavers are part of a wave of right-wing survivalists.
People up here care about each other and are tolerant of each other. I think they enjoy each other's differences.
The Weavers pay just $5,000 for a rocky hilltop.
So if you ever checked out land nowadays for land in Idaho, I mean, you're going to pay, for 20 acres, you probably pay at least $200,000, probably.
Plot of land where they build this plywood cabin, primarily out of scraps from lumber yards. And like many families in Naples, they raise animals and grow their own food. It was an idyllic life for the Weavers' children, Sarah, Sam, and the youngest, Rachel.
This used to be a garden. I didn't realize how good I had it then, but I do now. I hope my kids get to experience it. You know, it doesn't sound as fun as it really was, but I guess you'd have to grow up that way.
As time
and that's
passes,
the truth, because I was raised in a city and a postage stamp lot. And now I look at what I can do now, and I think it would be pretty cool to actually live on a farm and in this type of environment. But that's just me, because some people like the big city life. They like all the conveniences right at their hand. I'm the type of person, I just like nature.
The Weavers' views move even further to the right. Their mistrust of the government increases, and the family's religious beliefs become steeped in thoughts of Armageddon and racism.
You know, the word racist itself is a good word. It means proud of your race.
He got told a few times that the people just didn't want to hear his political views.
He did come in and express his views about blacks and Jews and anybody that was not of the white race. Kind of gave me an idea that he was a little bit out of the mainstream.
Get the heck out of here! I didn't come all the way down here to...
But the Weavers are far from alone in their beliefs. Elsewhere in the Pacific Northwest, the white movement has become militant. A right-wing terrorist group calling itself The Order has gone on a campaign.
I remember this period of time, okay? And it seemed like this type of groups were more prevalent than they are nowadays. I think that the population has moved away from this extremist, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, and I think a lot of these guys are way underground, but this was more, prevalent as far as groups and trying to find people like this, because I think that period of time, people were racist. Even if you go back, I remember my parents telling me that, my grandmother was really dark, and my dad would tell me that during that period of time, they would make them, when they went to church, they would have to actually go below in the basement to listen to the sermon, because they weren't allowed in the rest of the congregation. So, as we move forward, I think a lot more people are more, they're not as racist. I think that people can love their group of people, but I remember when I was a kid that there were so many more cousins and uncles and aunts, and they were more tightly gripped because they were, the first generation. Some of them came over at that time period. Even then, more of the European descent came over, and so they were closer knit people. Now everybody's just so spread out. They're more Americanized, and they kind of bled into society. So you don't see a lot of this infighting. I know that where I'm at, there's a group of people that came over, and they're still fighting their borders of their old country because they don't like. My dad tells a story about the Turks and the Greeks, or when he was in Korea, and he heard gunfighting, and he's like, there's no North Koreans around in our side. Who's shooting at each other? And the guys were saying, it's the Turks are shooting at the I guess the Greeks that were in that area. So these people still hated each other, and they probably still do to this day. But they were American, but they would still, they didn't like groups of people, and they were fighting these guys while they were trying to fight one enemy. It's just, I don't know why people don't like certain people, but it just happens that way, I guess, right?
Bombing banks, hijacking armored trucks, and even murdering a Jewish talk show host, all in the name of a new white homeland. After the order is finally brought down, law enforcement quickly turns its attention to the Aryan nations, the neo-Nazi political group where the order had its genesis.
So we were very aggressive in our investigative efforts against these individuals, and did everything we could to infiltrate the organization with sources of information.
The FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, as well as state and local law enforcement, were all converging on the Aryan nations. And in the wake of the recent terrorism in the Northwest, Aryan Nations headquarters, located just 70 miles from the Weaver cabin, is inundated with paid federal informants.
One race, one vote, one nation, one people, one homeland. We're going to have it.
Each summer, the Aryan Nations holds a weekend retreat for its members and possible recruits. It's 3 days of speakers, events, and Nazi pep rallies.
They call it a World Congress. It's a gathering of white separatists, some of them supremacists, people with that philosophy, basically.
And it's at one of these congresses in 1986 where a federal informant posing as a gun-running biker and using the name Gus Magisano begins a 4-year relationship with an unassuming attendee, Randy Weaver.
I didn't have any idea the scrutiny that they were under by the federal government is Aryan Nations place.
You know, that's what I think what happens is that people are innocent and they get lured and lied to by other individuals, and the next thing you know, they got a bullseye on their back.
Over the next few years, Magisano slowly builds Randy's trust.
See,
and
this
offers
is
him
the FBI that we all known to grow and hate, right? You know, this dude just went to these meetings. He wasn't really involved. It kind of sparked his interest. He got involved in it. He didn't, you know, he was, you know, obviously he was under the influence of this, you know, culture, which, you know, as long as he's not planning on shooting anybody, what difference does it make if he hates somebody? I don't, you know, everybody hates somebody, right? I mean, we're, you know, constantly, I showed you that earlier that, you know, a guy hates white people. I mean, that's his prerogative, but as long as he ain't out there doing harm to them and their families or whatever. But this is FBI agent, and this is what they do. This is what has to, this is prevalent in our day, right?
$100 for 2 sawed-off shotguns. In October of 1989, after sawing off the barrels himself, Randy Weaver sells the guns to Magisano.
See, this is what they did in Michigan with Whitmer. These agents lure these people. They get them to do something that's a crime. And, you know, some people are impressionable. They'll do this because this Weaver needed the money, okay? So whether he knew to do this right or wrong, he kind of explains it. But this agent gave him the money to do this, right? And that's, to me, there shouldn't even been an issue. This agent, he committed a crime, trying to tell somebody else to commit a crime. He is the one that should be actually convicted of this crime.
But soon after, Randy abruptly ends the relationship after learning that Magisano is actually a snitch. The ATF is now without an informant. So, with his connections to the white movement, a clean military background, and an arrestable offense to use as leverage, the ATF looks to replace Magisano.
See, they set this dude up. They set him up, and now they're going to use it against him, which is
Randy Weaver.
Frustrating.
Then I was approached by his bosses and said that they would bring federal firearms charges against me unless I joined their team, basically. And I said, well, I was not going to join their team and become an informant. And therefore, they just carried it on from there, and it, you know, got blown out of proportion after that. If I had to join their team and become a snitch and start working for them, none of this would have happened.
Well, he's right. None of it would have happened, but him snitch, some of these guys might have killed him.
Vicki and I was going out. We had a snowmobile down the county road, and right there on the Blast Bridge, there's an old Chevy pickup with a cab-over camper on it.
Posing as tourists with an overheated truck, ATF agents wait for Randy and Vicki to come and help.
As soon as I had my hands on top of the radiator and my foot up on the bumper, this guy reaches around and grabs me right here and says, "Freeze, federal agents!"
1 full year after selling the illegal guns, Randy is finally arrested. During his arraignment, he is allowed to sign over his property as bond. But the part-time federal magistrate mistakenly tells him that if found guilty, his property will be taken away.
Found guilty, they're going to take it. They set him up, then they're going to take his property away.
And with their paranoid fears now seemingly proving true, the Weavers decide that rather than facing their destiny in court,
these globalists, they want to show you that the New World Order is some kind of right-wing extremist thought. You know, you look at all these things and it's propaganda, and they utilize this extremist group to show you that, hey, one world order is an extremist, thought or
their
idea.
only option is to stay on the mountain.
It wasn't just Dad. It was our whole family. And we didn't want him to go down because we figured they'd put him in jail for, sawing off shotguns. And we'd rather, stay on the mountain and live with our family, happily than have it be torn apart. But I guess that backfired.
Then we heard on the radio that the white supremacist Randy Weaver, blah, 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 didn't show up for court, but the U.S. Marshals will get their man.
Once Randy fails to appear in court, he officially becomes a federal fugitive, and his case is turned over to the
what
U.S.
they don't
Marshals.
show in this video, and what the older daughter said, that they had issued for February, and they had sent him the issue for February. That they didn't send it. I'm sorry, they didn't send it to him. But the actual court date was for February. But they sent him the notice to appear in March, so he didn't show up. And that's what they didn't. I mean, this video, this documentary doesn't explain it like that. They're just saying that he didn't show up, but actually, it was meant to make sure he didn't show up.
Service. But unlike most cases, the Marshals know exactly where Randy is. In fact, the Weavers refuse to leave their hill, even for food. And it's during this time that they gain the support of a small group of local sympathizers.
The first day I went up there, I needed to know, did he or did he not saw the shotgun off? And he told me he didn't.
Randy and Vicky turn their holdout from the law into a moral stand. They believe they are victims of religious and political...
He told his friend he didn't do it, but he did. And I think that he used that like I was persuaded to do it and I did it, which he probably could explain that a little bit further to his buddy there.
Persecution at the hands of an unjust government.
I felt that Randy was being picked on because of his religious and his political views. And if it happened to Randy, it could have happened to me.
Vicky begins a letter-writing campaign, making clear their beliefs to friends, family, and even law enforcement.
She wrote one to the prosecutor, maybe, and she called them servants of the Queen of Babylon, which they are. They still are, the whole bunch of them. They're all servants of Babylon. She just made them all mad as hornets. I was proud of her. Still am.
But the letters do little to help Randy's cause, and in April of 1991, the Marshals Service sends the case file, including Vicky's letters, to a psychologist. They are sent back a psychological profile, mistakenly referring to the Weavers as the Randalls, that paints an extreme picture of a paranoid family led by a fierce matriarch who are all ready and willing to fight to the death.
They're going to fight to the death? Probably so. This is instilled to them. They believe this way. But they just wanted to be left alone. I mean, if the FBI didn't get involved, they didn't, have him saw these shotguns, they just left him alone. I think this guy was smart enough to say, eventually, this group is kind of out there and I don't want to be involved. I just want to live alone with my family. And, I think that's what a way to play it out. At least that's the way I think it would.
As the months pass, the Weavers remain holed up on their remote mountaintop, and the Marshals, hesitant to approach the cabin for fear of a possible confrontation, continue sending messages through friends. In October of '91, in a small guest shed on the Weaver property, Vicky gives birth to their fourth child, a baby girl named Elishaba. With winter approaching, the family prepares for the long months ahead, and with plenty of more pressing cases, the Marshalls leave the Weavers alone on their hilltop. But on March 8, 1992, a full year since Randy's stand had begun, a nearby newspaper from Spokane, Washington, publishes a front-page article about a local fugitive snubbing his nose at the federal government. Within days, the story catches the eye of the national media. Randy Weaver, and the tough talk coming from his remote mountain, quickly becomes a thorn in the side of the Marshalls.
You know, he said it was a full year. This guy still, Weaver, still, he didn't go out there and wasn't a commander of some kind of right-wing extremist group. Nothing. He just, was taking care of his family.
Service.
You put up a bluff. You ever played poker?
Back in Washington, the U.S. Marshals Service is raising the stakes. 3 weeks after the first story is printed, a special meeting is held at Marshals headquarters. Based on neighbors' warnings, the now numerous news reports, and the growing mythology surrounding the Weavers, this remote cabin in the Idaho woods.
It's funny to see this documentary pretty much stands on the side of the Weavers, right? The mythology, this is starting to smell like egos and that whole male, I'm better than you are, my dick's bigger than yours type thing, right? So I'm in a position of authority. This is the way a lot of these teachers act, a lot of the local government, police officers, I'm an authority. I'm giving this, and this is what, and as far as a public servant, you respond to individuals, Americans, as that. You are their servant. That's it. You are not a head authority over them. You are the servant of the people. And you conduct yourself in a manner that is a servant, right? So you go into a conversation that person's always right. They're innocent until proven guilty. And you carry on that conversation. You don't come with this, I'm in charge and I'm going to beat you down.
It becomes the center of a complex surveillance and apprehension plan dubbed Operation Northern Exposure. During the next 5 months, the Marshals Service records over 100 hours of surveillance footage from solar-powered cameras strategically planted around the Weaver property.
And isn't this kind of unconstitutional right here to actually film people without their consent? I think that in my state, you can actually record or videotape with somebody with one of the parties consenting to it, correct? So if I went out and I recorded somebody else, like say if there was a conversation with an individual, I am my legal right to record them because I am the consenting individual. Now, if somebody else outside of us was consenting to our conversation and they weren't having a conversation with us, then that's illegal. You follow what I'm saying? So myself and someone else having a conversation, but a third party is recording that conversation, is not involved. They don't know who he is. That's illegal. If I recorded or videotaped another person that I was talking to, that is not illegal in my state. Some states that's illegal also, but in my state, it's not.
It's a total invasion of privacy, It's like if my brother would have found out some of the stuff I did, I'd be embarrassed enough, let alone the government.
The surveillance clearly shows that the Weavers are almost always armed and seem to be prepared for some kind of confrontation. The cameras also show the family now joined by Kevin Harris, a 23-year-old man from Spokane who had lived with the Weavers as a teenager and looks up to Randy as a father figure. As surveillance escalates, so does media coverage. The national press seems drawn to the Weaver story. Randy is billed as a local folk hero, and his plywood cabin is transformed into a mountaintop fortress.
It became blatantly obvious they were being watched, but yet they kept waiting for someone to come to their door.
In the early morning hours of August 21st, 1992, a team of 6 deputy U.S. Marshals, fully armed
So that's 30 years ago. We're on the anniversary of 30 years ago.
and outfitted with night vision goggles, hike up the Weavers' Hill to gather intelligence for the final phase of Operation Northern Exposure. After 8 hours of surveying the terrain and watching the Weavers, their day is done and they begin to sneak back down the mountain. But for some reason, things don't proceed as planned. And in the hurried confusion, tragedy is about to strike.
Our yellow lab striker was so worked up and excited that I figured it had to be probably a mountain lion or a bear. And Kevin and Sam come down around behind and followed me. And I said, well, I'm going to go down the logging road and I'll meet you down at the Y. And they just following the dog through the woods. Actually, I didn't know which way the dog was going to go for sure, but I wasn't going to go tramping off through the woods chasing the dog. Getting old and lazy, you know.
14-year-old Sam Weaver and Kevin Harris, 23, both armed and anticipating a wild animal, split off from Randy and chased the dog through the woods.
And I got about maybe right to here, and some guy jumped from the right side of the Y there down, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 foot right down in the center there. I could tell he had a weapon, and he was fully camoed out. All I could see basically was his eyes, and I saw his mouth move. He yelled at me, he said, "Freeze, Weaver." I said, "Screw you," and turned and started running back up the hill. And I was yelling all the time. I said, get home, boys, it's an ambush."
The boys don't hear Randy, and they continue chasing the dog through the woods until they come upon the marshals. Sam Weaver's dog, Striker, reaches the marshals first.
And I heard a bang. Arr, arr, arr. They shot the dog.
In the next few seconds, a flurry of panicked gunfire breaks out between the marshals and the boys. And amidst the chaos, a deputy U.S. Marshal is shot.
Okay, so I wasn't there, and you weren't there, but why in God's green earth is there even shots fired? I mean, I didn't see Mr. Weaver here turn around and shooting at this marshal hiding in the woods. I mean, jumping out at him. He just turned around and ran away. I mean, who's fired first? I mean, this whole who knows? We don't know.
And killed.
I said, get home, and Sam yells, "I'm coming, Dad," and then there was a bunch more shooting, and took my shotgun, aimed it up in the air, and pulled the trigger, and straight up in the air, I didn't know what to do. It was after that, it was like everything was over with.
With an officer down in unfamiliar territory, 2 of the deputies that were not in the gunfight run for nearly an hour through the woods and down the hill to the nearest neighbor, where they make a frantic call to 911.
I got an officer dead. I got 3 pinned down. I need help quick. We have
You know, obviously this guy is caught up in adrenaline. He's not pinned down. He's made a phone call at one of the neighbors' house.
We had an incident with Randy Weaver.
You know what? He had to go a long distance, because if you're in a 20 acres and you're on this guy's property, I don't know if you guys ran even 1 acre, 2 acres, 20 acres, and you're going to the neighbor's house. You're running a long distance. I mean,
I want the state police. I want all the help here I can get. I've got to go back in for more officers that are trapped. Where are you calling?
But the officers are not trapped. In fact,
you heard him. They're not trapped. Okay, this dude's lying.
Marshals are completely unaware that the Weavers have also suffered a loss.
I got home pretty shortly, and then a little shortly after that, Kevin come walking home, and we said, "Where's Sam?" And he said, "Sam's dead."
Samuel Weaver, Randy and Vicky's 14-year-old son, was killed in the firefight, shot once in the arm and once through the back.
When Kevin said Sam's dead, well, we just lost it. You know, we were up there and we were just, I mean, I was cussing and screaming.
You know, these marshals, they've been there for they said 100 hours. So these marshals knew that what there was only, you know, a family friend, the dad, the mom, and the kids, right? There was nobody else. They knew they had 100 hours of videotape. So these guys in the woods watching them knew that they were either going to shoot one of the two adults or the kid. I mean, man, it makes you sick to your stomach, right?
Crying and combination. Nobody yelled at us. Nobody shot at us. I figured these guys had split the scene.
Randy, Vicky, and Kevin bring Sam back up the old logging road to their cabin, where they clean his wounds and place his body in.
I don't know if anybody watching has ever held one of their dead children in their hands. I have. I've held my oldest daughter, who was 33 at the time. Moments after her death. And I know for a fact what they were going through.
At the last moment that you remember your brothers like that.
Meanwhile, caught off guard and ill-prepared to handle a federal situation, local law enforcement evacuates the neighbors and closes off the entire mountain.
Because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea this was something that I had not been schooled in or prepared for in any way, shape, or form.
The news of federal officers came.
Yeah, because you're living in this city, Naples, Idaho, and obviously you could go 100 years and not one incident you have to arrest anybody.
Down by gunfire deep in the Idaho woods was quickly reaching Washington. And the one thing the Marshal Service was trying so hard to avoid, an armed conflict with children, was now right in front of them.
I got 10 down. I need help, quick.
Good afternoon. A federal agent has been shot and killed in a confrontation with a fugitive in North Idaho. Weaver, a fugitive on a federal firearms
Whenever
charge.
a federal officer is killed, government policy dictates that the matter be turned over immediately to the FBI. But on August 21st, 1992, the FBI had never heard of Ruby Ridge or Randy Weaver. All they knew was what they were hearing from the panicking marshals.
Got a call from FBI headquarters, and he advised there'd been a shooting up at Ruby Ridge and that a marshal had been killed. The marshals were pinned down. We basically had two functions going up there. One was the rescue of the marshals, and the other one was the arrest of Randy Weaver.
The situation, as presented, leads to the decision to call in the FBI's secret weapon, the Hostage Rescue Team, or HRT. Perhaps the most elite squad of snipers and assaulters in the world.
What can you say? What can you say? They're a hostage rescue with elite snipers.
And on the way out to Idaho, somewhere over the Great Plains, Dick Rogers, the head of the HRT, in consultation with FBI Assistant Director Larry Potts, agreed that the possibility of entering an ongoing gunfight, combined with the intelligence they were receiving on the Weaver family, weren't.
You know, they didn't look back on the intelligence from way back. I mean, to look at all the documents from who is this guy, how many people are on this mountain, none of that. I don't, you know, if you were going to do something as simple as put a plan in the ground, right? Wouldn't you do research on how to plan it? Basic, super basic information, like what kind of plant it is. Does it grow in my environment where I'm at? How often do I need to water it? What kind of soil does it need? Wouldn't you look into that before you just threw it in the ground and expected it to grow in your area?
Did extreme measures.
Yes.
They begin to draft special rules of engagement to give the snipers more freedom than the standard FBI shooting policy. An action unprecedented in FBI history.
Okay, it's unprecedented in the FBI history. Unprecedented, remember that.
But the threat of a firefight has long since subsided, and the marshals are finally taken safely down the hill with the help of the Idaho State Police.
I had a bad feeling about this situation before I even left home. But, you know, I'd been in 300 plus situations, and, you know, I remember now saying to my wife, well, I don't feel good about this one. And turned out to be an accurate vibe.
On Saturday morning, almost 24 hours after the initial firefight, as law enforcement from all over the region mobilized to the remote hilltop, a briefing is held with FBI negotiators, the HRT's tactical team, and on-scene commander, Gene Glenn.
Gene Glenn is in charge. And in theory, the way the FBI manages is the negotiation team leader makes his recommendations, and the tactical team leader makes his recommendations, and
I'm still dumbfounded that these guys with all so-called experience, they could walk up there and just say, hey, dude, put down your gun. You got kids here, right? I mean, let me say this again. There's a woman, the wife, the husband, a friend, and 3 children. Obviously, they don't know that this son is dead by now, but 3 children and an infant, right? And they're tactical maneuvers
commander,
or whatever.
Makes his decision from there.
That vehicle right there, even if it's transportation, is too much.
Of Dick Rogers and the HRT,
Drive that up
the
there.
question as to the seriousness of the situation seems to have already been answered.
Kind of almost reverse psychology, you know? If they're here, it must be bad. Whereas if we send out a county team of 5 guys and a couple of negotiators, you know, this is nothing, a barricaded subject. But if these guys are on scene, whoa, you know, this is something bad's about to happen here.
But he's an FBI negotiator. He sent 5 guys up there. There's a barricade scene and a subject. That's done. No problem. We can get in there, right? Now they're sending this crap up there?
Perhaps the most intimidating show of power is the FBI's use of the tank-like armored personnel carrier, or APC, the appearance of which begins to have a startling effect on the locals, typical Western individualists who don't take kindly to intimidation.
Right. Who's escalating the situation? These extremists or the FBI? Who's the extremist in this?
Come on! Whatever it is, both sides are wrong. This is getting crazy. This is absolutely... Come on, get a grip, people!
Come on, get a grip.
Against one is there, huh? We want a head count. We want to know how many are still alive up there.
As the day progresses, the FBI sets up a field headquarters in a small meadow just at the foot of the Weaver's Hill.
I don't know if you people ever wonder, though. She's probably what, maybe in her 30s, maybe somewhere in the late 30s, right? You ever wonder what these people are at now? I mean, how they feel about yelling on TV, news like that? I mean, 30 years ago, she'd probably be almost what, 70? Is she still around? Is that guy still, do they still live there? Something stupid like that. I'm always interested.
And even though the marshals at this point are quite safe, and there has been no shooting at all for at least 24 hours, the buildup continues, and the rules of engagement somehow remain as part of the operations plan.
In my 27 years as an agent, I've been involved in an awful lot of arrests, an awful lot of raids, and this is the first time we'd used rules of engagement.
First time. 27 years. Now remember, they know that for 100 hours of videotape that there's nobody else up there other than this family and a friend, right?
Dick Rogers.
Do they need practice? Is that why they're doing this?
Said that any adult male with a weapon was a target.
The FBI's standard deadly force policy allows agents to shoot only as a defensive measure, but the final rules of engagement that are faxed to Washington include the statement, if any adult male is observed with a weapon.
See, I don't remember if you watched the movie Black Hawk Down. Obviously, that's Hollywood performed, but actually the whole issue, the whole, scenario did happen. But that's what the guy, said in that movie. You don't shoot unless you're fired upon. And this is the same thing. That's the defensive measures that they took. Don't shoot unless you're fired upon. but then they changed the rules
Deadly
of
force
engagement.
can and should be employed. The guns which the Weavers thought would protect them were now the very things that made them targets. Washington approves the plan, and snipers are immediately dispatched to the hill to create a perimeter around the Weaver cabin.
See how quiet it is right now?
See, I think, you know, being a situation now, if he wants to kill his family or whatever else, he's a nut job. You know, I still don't think you shoot him or carry on. Like I say, it's just them they don't have tactical weapons to shoot somebody or the, you know.
It's just the way it was.
As the snipers settled into position, the FBI prepares to approach the cabin, and the Weavers wait.
The other two dogs started barking a little bit and whimpering, and we was all in the house at the time, and I told everybody, I said, well, there's probably somebody out there approaching and they want to talk to us. So I said, I'm going to go out and see if what they got to say.
Randy, his 16-year-old daughter Sarah, and Kevin Harris leave the cabin to see if anyone is there.
Well, nobody wants to talk. It's apparent they don't want to talk to us, so I come walking from the outcropping over there.
What he said is nobody wanted to talk to him.
When no one responds, Randy goes to check the guest shed where Sam's body has been laying since the morning before.
Come around the shed and I switched the rifle to my left hand, and there was a latch up about this high on the door that you had to turn to open the door. I was going to go in and see Sam again. And just as I grabbed that latch, somebody shot me through this shoulder.
After hearing the gunshot, Vicky Weaver comes to the front of the house and calls for Randy and the kids to get
Does Vicky have a weapon?
inside.
Sarah started pushing me, get in the house, and she was pushing me. Kevin come down off the rock outcropping and joined in behind us. And 1, 2, 3, we was all going like this to the house.
As the three run for the cabin, the sniper holds his fire until they approach the door.
Vicky was holding the door, standing right here holding the door. The door would have been right here. She's holding it like this with Elishaba. The bullet went through Vicky's head and killed her, and that same bullet went into Kevin's left arm and tore it up real bad, and then it split up. And the main bullet kept going in and lodged about that far from his heart.
I didn't know where Mom was hit, but I knew something was wrong because she was down, and I just started, like, saying Mom and crying.
See, this has enough to make you tear up like her, right? I mean, nobody knows this family, but for them to give the authority to shoot them, man, it just makes it just... You know, the dad's got to live without the wife.
As you can imagine, that was a very chilling moment when shots were fired. And the sniper observer team wasn't sure what they hit.
What?
After 18 months of review.
What? They wasn't sure what the sniper observer team was not sure what they hit. He shouldn't have said that. He should say who they hit. But that sniper knew who he hit because he was aiming for the wife. He hit her in her head. I mean, if these are elite snipers, the best in the world, they know who he's shooting at the mom.
Losing to come down, any second chances Randy may have had are now gone. The confrontation the Weavers had predicted has come true. A U.S. Marshal has been killed. Sam's body is still in the shed. Randy and Kevin are both wounded, and Vicky now lay dead in the kitchen.
When I turned around and saw him laying there, I knew from then on we were dead meat. They were just murdering us now. And you have to be there to understand the feeling. It was like I didn't even care anymore. I just wanted to kick the door down so I could take a couple with me.
The first person to actually speak out to Randall Weaver was the head of the hostage rescue team, Dick Rogers.
He gave a surrender demand?
Yeah, an ultimatum, come on out or else. We're going to start crushing your buildings and push your house.
This is the whole, they didn't learn from this because a few months later, they do the same thing in Waco, right? You either come out or we're going to crush your building.
House down the cliff. And
you don't shoot a woman. You don't shoot these people and then say you're going to bulldoze their house down. I mean, you could say about whatever you want about other countries and they do this to their people. We do it, this government does it to their own people too.
We got no response from the cabinet at all.
Words are like bullets, once they come out of your mouth.
You know what? I don't hate America. I don't hate the people that run it. I mean, they're voted in. They get there. They do what the people want them to do. They have their own agendas. They have, just like me, they think their own way. But to do this there's a whole new hate involved.
You can't call them back.
For sure.
Makes an ultimatum like that, you can't call it back.
Meanwhile, 3 miles from the cabin, where law enforcement has closed the road, locals have started to gather in protest to what they see as an outlandish show of force on the part of the federal government.
They're doing this now with this whole Trump thing, tell the truth, and the whole laptop with Hunter Biden's son, and what else is there? The Hillarys, the Clintons, whoever else. I mean, I don't tell the truth. Nobody's going to do anything. Okay. They're not. Just go home, eat your pizza and watch Netflix. I mean, nobody's going to do anything. They're still going to be in charge 30 years from now.
We need some warm bodies. You into it?
Yeah, they were real concerned. What's going on in my neighborhood? Why have all these armed men suddenly descended into my community? It's a shock.
Yeah, you're all bad with all your guns.
You know what? This dude hates just as much as they do. Look at this dude's face. And this guy next to, they don't realize that Weaver's, he's not building a military up on this hill. Even the neighbors know better than these
But the people at the roadblock, as well as law enforcement, are still unaware of the tragedy that has just transpired on the ridge above.
They know what's exactly.
Randy Weaver has told friends all he wants is to be left alone. But with the sudden appearance of military...
that's a lie. Because if you shot somebody, you would know that you shot a child or an adult, right? These guys running down the hill, they know that the sniper could go back to his, his leadership and say, yeah, I just shot at the wife in the head and I shot that one guy in his shoulder, right? Then they could walk up there and say, hey, dude, you might as well come down because it's all over with. You don't have to tell them we're going to bulldoze her house down.
Hardware like this, his one-man stand against the law is suddenly taking on the appearance of a full-blown war.
Right.
We need this for one man, his wife, and his kids in a cabin?
Right.
On day 3 of the standoff,
this dude
with more
even
troops
knows.
Still arriving, earth-moving equipment is brought in to widen the roads and build a new bridge, allowing larger trucks and even...
I mean, widen the roads and build a new bridge. I mean, this is what your tax pay. This now, get with this program here, guys. It's just they know they killed the son. They know they killed the wife. Now there's only there's 2 injured adults. There's nobody left. A 16-year-old girl and her sister and a baby. And they're bringing, this is the lunacy of this. Get together with your people. Look at what you've just done and say, listen, everybody go home. We can send you could send anybody up there at this point because nobody's going to shoot them.
More equipment up the mountain.
The command post area was taking on kind of a little...
Listen, this is real. This really happened. This is not like a joke. And I just can't. It's almost funny, actually.
Community appearance. It was growing very rapidly. It seemed like new people were showing up all the time. It was a busy little place.
Some people were getting ready to go to work. Some people were just getting off of work. Others people were playing horseshoes,
amount of money they're putting in,
jogging, or taking a shower. The only thing we didn't have was a movie theater.
Don
Look at this dude laughing. He's right there, laughing.
Kasulis was part of an FBI SWAT team from Denver, Colorado. They were one of the few units at Ruby Ridge that spoke out against the special rules of
right
engagement.
on, brother.
I remember I just said, that's ridiculous, or that's crazy, and we kind of talked about it, and we decided we weren't going to go by those rules.
Don't you think we ought to consider when we can shoot and when we can't? Shouldn't that be, like, foremost in our minds? It apparently wasn't.
The FBI uses a remote-controlled robot to place a phone near the Weaver's door.
Man, listen. If they got that kind of information back, you know, what if they had a drone? They could flew a drone around the house and shoot at them if they wanted to. Now, back then, look at the technology they had back then. This 30 years ago.
Speaking through the phone, the negotiations team attempts to establish a dialogue. And even though their initial attempts fail, to the negotiators, the situation is simple.
As far as I'm concerned, it's an easy barricade sitting on top of a mountain. Why don't we just sit here and wait?
Right. Sit there
Everything
and wait,
ran into one day for me. I don't remember night from day, and I just remember I took care of Elishba most of the time. I remember going into the pantry to get food. And there was blood all over the floor.
That's her head spilled all over the floor.
The next big thing we heard was like tracked vehicle coming in the yard. And we heard a lot of scrunching and crashing, and while they were running over the woodshed, and I told the kids that, you know, they're going to push the house over. That's what I thought they were going to do.
Right.
The FBI uses the APC to clear out the area and gain control of the property, but it comes to a stop just before the guest shed.
For some reason, one of the HRT guys just jumped out of the APC out the back and opened up this door. And that's when they discovered Sam's body.
Sam's body had been lying in the shed for 2 days. At that point, the possibility that any of the Weavers might have been hurt had not even been considered.
Yeah, right.
We had no...
Yeah, right. No, but the marshals didn't tell you they shot anybody. They didn't tell. They was a secret, right? That the day before, the sniper shot, 3 people, but he didn't tell anybody either. That wasn't even
information that he'd even been shot at. So these are all things that happen, and you can have all the control of things. You can control property, high ground, and everything. But people's minds. And we didn't know what they were thinking because we couldn't understand their losses.
Yeah, you could.
And that changed everything.
The discovery of Sam's death sends a shockwave through law enforcement. And with tension running high down at the roadblock, the FBI decides to wait until daylight to break the news.
Day 4. So remember, this 11
Federal
days.
officials
here.
have just announced Randy Weaver's 13-year-old son died during the initial shootout Friday. Protesters and neighbors are apparently not
This
taking
lady's
the news
pissed.
well.
Get away from me.
Are you proud of yourself? Are you proud of yourself? You're gonna kill all the children to get one kid.
When they discovered...
Is that a real comment to say you're proud of yourself? I don't know. I mean, it sounds kind of odd to say.
Sam's
proud of
body,
yourself.
it kind of ratcheted up that feeling of being in some kind of out-of-control tragedy.
On Tuesday, day 5 of the standoff, the FBI finally investigates the crime scene. They quickly learn that what the marshals had been reporting may have been greatly exaggerated.
You know, if you're pinned down for 12 hours, there's going to be several hundred rounds that have been fired, maybe several thousand rounds to pin down that many people. And
you know, the exaggeration that all these guys that were supposedly pinned down should be arrested and tried for crimes of getting his family killed.
We didn't find the shell casings. We didn't find the rounds. Found a few.
The special rules of engagement, which are still officially in place, are finally called off. On Wednesday, August 26th, on the other side of the country, in Quincy, Massachusetts, services are held for U.S. Deputy Marshal William Deegan, who was killed in the same...
You know, until you get the whole story, you shouldn't run into judgment, okay? Obviously, these guys were scared. They thought this little boy and this guy were going to shoot him and the dog was going to bite him. I mean, you got to feel for this dude because he died 30 years ago, but I think all this could have been avoided from the time that snitch or FBI agent was planted, Marshall, I don't care who it was. I'd have to look back because I didn't really pay attention. If, you know, it said the FBI agent was a plant, right? And then it turned over to the Marshall agency, U.S. Marshals. And then the FBI said that they had no idea what was going on. But wasn't the FBI a plant inside of this group that contacted Weaver originally from the start? I'd have to go back. List that in the comments if you guys paid close attention to that. I know I watched it and I even commented on it, but I'm not sure if that was, maybe I was sure if it was FB, but comment anyway. Comment below.
Shootout that killed Sam. Back in Idaho, the roadblock protest has turned into an around-the-clock vigil. As word spreads, the tone of the roadblock changes. The locals are joined by neo-Nazis and skinheads who have come from all over the country to show their support for the Weavers and their beliefs.
We had heard on the local news that there were people gathering at the roadblock, which felt good. If they started shooting us up and everything, well, the people down at the roadblock would have known something was wrong.
That afternoon, Randy and Kevin dictate a note to Sarah, detailing exactly what they remember, in case they don't make it off the mountain.
Is there any agent here that represents Gene Glenn from the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
The standoff in Naples, Idaho has taken an unusual turn.
Bo Greitz, a retired Army colonel renowned for his work on behalf of U.S. soldiers missing in action, performed what he calls a citizen's arrest on 4 top officials.
We, as citizens of the United States, do hereby present this citizen's arrest warrant.
The whole idea was I wasn't going to arrest the governor of Idaho. I wanted action. I wanted somebody to listen to me. I wanted somebody to let me through so
I mean, can you do that? I mean, I understand that you could do a citizen's arrest of whatever, but you never hear about it anymore. I'd have to look into that, make a video of it. Can you citizen arrest the president of the United States for not closing the border? I mean, that's illegal, right? I mean, that's a crime. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, according to the law, you can't cross the border. It's a crime. So do we citizen arrest all these people coming across the border, whatever you want to call them, migrants? Migrants usually go back home, but invaders, I guess that would, illegal border crossers. How's that? Nicer term.
Could go up to the top of the ridge, not be dressed in Kevlar, carrying a submachine gun, so that maybe Weaver would talk to me.
Consider yourself served.
Then one day they said that Colonel Bo Greitz had showed up at the roadblock down below, and the next time they hollered at me, I hollered back and I told him, I said, I'll talk to Bo Greitz.
The FBI lets Bo Greitz, a Green Beret commander and right-wing icon, pass the roadblock to talk to Randy, even though they know he's a risk.
Especially knowing his political stance and his connections to some of these right-wingers. Sure, it was riskier.
And, this was no good. I couldn't talk to Weaver, so I jumped off the tank, and I came right over here. I said, Weaver, this is Bo Greitz. And I saw his face.
I wonder why he didn't call him by
right
his
there
first
in
name.
the window of the bathroom.
Bo accomplished more during that first
I wonder why he didn't say Randy Weaver like he says Bo Greitz instead of calling him Weaver.
evening than all the negotiation had from the beginning to that.
You know, when somebody uses your last name like that, it's kind of authoritarian, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. If somebody called me by my last name instead of by my first name, I think by your first name, it's more cordial, right? It's more confrontatory.
Point. And so that was a positive thing. The negative of Bo's dialogue was we found out a lot of things that were kind of shocking.
And then is when he told me about Vicky, and I was shocked.
I've never been shocked by any single event in my 21 years as I was by that one sentence uttered by Randall Weaver. Vicky's been killed, I've been shot, and Kevin's been shot.
Randy's in good health. Unfortunately, Vicky is dead.
Karen, the news earlier tonight, just a few moments ago, that Vicky Weaver, the wife of Randall Weaver, has been shot and killed. She was shot and killed last Saturday and has been dead for 6 days. It's a very volatile situation, although it appears to be quiet at this moment.
Yes, this will be a tense night on the roadblock.
It never entered our mind that she was anything but an active person in the cabin up there. So that was a tough night.
Never will you take another woman down. Never. One day we die. We're going to war.
They didn't go to war. I hate when people do this. You know, they get out there and they get all emotional and they say, we're going to war. Nobody's going to war. Okay. The lady is not positioned to do that. I don't like when people yell. It's so stupid sometimes because you're not going to do anything. You don't have a group of people behind you that can even say that we're going to war with you. Nobody's going to do that. You're on your own. It's just a loudmouth, big mouth person.
A lot of anger.
It doesn't mean nothing.
Just hoping for daylight and hoping for something better.
You know, when these people did these riots in 2020 and they were yelling, you know, we're going to, burn your place down. Well, they had other people like mine behind them that were burning everything down. This lady did.
This morning began very hopeful after last night's very tragic news that Vicky Weaver had been killed. In fact, there was word buzzing through all quarters that this might indeed be the big day.
On day 9 of the standoff, Bo Greitz returns at dawn to keep the dialogue going, and Randy Weaver makes sure that Bo understands what actually happened.
The door's open like this. Yep. She comes out and says, what happened? I said, I'm here. She goes, those sons of bitches. She turns around and here's the door. They knew she was there. My daughter and her and the baby was right there.
As the Weavers tell Bo their story, they learn that one of their biggest fears was true.
That thing started shotgun on us. No, I don't want it.
Yeah, it started off shotgun, boy, right there. You grab that telephone, boom.
The robot was setting right in front, right up against and right in front of the door. The robot had a claw, and it had a 12-gauge shotgun that was pointed.
They had a 12-gauge shotgun on the robot.
Right in the door.
That's right. The robot did have a weapon. I forget what it was, a shotgun or something. But once again, as far as I know, that was an oversight.
The first real human being in all this heartbreak and trauma and tragedy to come in there to Randy was Jackie.
The next thing I knew, Bo was approaching me about going up, and it just happened before I knew it.
The FBI allows Jackie Brown, a friend of Vicky's who has been at the roadblock since the beginning, to go up and help Bo with negotiations. Randy and the girls immediately allow Jackie in. She is the first person inside the cabin since she had visited Vicky a few days before the standoff.
It wasn't a happy place anymore. It had already been proven that if they stuck their head out, they'd be shot. There's no doubt about that. At that point, they believed they were going to die there, sure.
Not yet ready to give up their fight, the Weavers give Jackie a list of supplies they need and the note they had written a few days before.
That was the biggest and most important thing to us, to me anyway. Even if they killed us after that, our side of the story got out. Because at that point, I still don't think we were going to get out alive.
On day 10, Bo returns to the cabin with one objective: to get Kevin Harris out. In the days since the shooting, Kevin's wound had become badly infected and had put him close to death.
I said, Weaver, if I have anything to do with this, if I can testify before the jury, I said, if I were on the jury, you'd fry if you let that boy die in here.
At 1:47 p.m., Kevin Harris finally surrenders. His wounds are immediately treated at a field medical tent before being flown directly to a Spokane hospital. On that same day, Jackie returns with the donated food and supplies. She and Bo take care of the next order of business, removing Vicky's body.
But I picked her up right here, and so as I walked to carry her out, gosh, they just were wailing. I've never heard such, and I've been around people that have endured, families that have endured death too much. They were just wailing and crying, and they were saying the same thing. Bo, please, please don't let our mama's body touch the ground.
Dick Rogers was standing there with a group of FBI agents, and I simply stated I needed something to clean with. They had shut the water off, and they handed me 2 5-gallon buckets of water and towels and paper towels, and I went back in the cabin and cleaned.
Jackie Brown is allowed to clean the kitchen, unwittingly destroying evidence that could potentially damage the FBI.
Anytime that a crime scene is disturbed, there's evidence that's lost. And when Vicki Weaver's blood was cleaned up, there had to be some loss of evidence.
But it was just something that had to be done.
That night, even with all the progress being made, the HRT begins to show signs that they are getting restless.
Dick Rogers told me, if you cannot...
See, the issue here is they have the one guy. They have the mother. They have the son, correct? So all that's left is the dad and the 2 daughters and the infant, right? Why do they need all this equipment? They could tell them, hey, everybody go home. De-escalate. That's what I would have said. Everybody go home, take the road builders and the equipment and the tanks and everything else you got and give me 5 guys, or they can just stay there. I mean, eventually they're going to want to see their mother buried, right? I mean, they want to bury their mother. They just said, hey, dude, end this, go bury your mom, and we'll take care of it afterwards.
Get them out by noon. We are taking them out.
We've already done so many incredibly stupid things.
Yeah, do some more.
This is just one more incredibly stupid thing.
Even that guy's strong.
On the morning of the 11th day, no one in the vigil knew the pressure that Bo was under to get Randy and the girls out safely.
Randy said, Bo, is that you? And I said, yes, it is, Weaver. And then he said what I knew he was going to say.
He calls him Bo, but he calls him Weaver.
We have prayed all night, Bo, the girls and I. He said, we have decided that they are going to have to kill us, just like they killed our mama and our little brother.
Bo Greitz has no more time to appease the family. He has to get the Weavers out right then and there.
He said, Weaver, tonight's the night. They're coming after you. If you don't come out, you got to come out now or you're going to be dead and all this. And by this time, I had a feeling that maybe we could come out without getting shot. And so I said, this is it, girls. We got to go now. And so we did.
I had Randy Weaver with an iron grip, and I looked over, and Randy had Elishaba, and by God, we walked down that hill. And his little girls, I think, while they were terrified, I think they honestly began to think that maybe they wouldn't be shot down. And God, that's what you're supposed to think in America, for crying out loud.
2 words it seems that all of us have been waiting to hear. It's over. An 11-day standoff that took 3 lives has now ended with the surrender of Randy Weaver.
Randy is taken into custody and immediately flown by helicopter to medical attention before being taken to jail in Boise by private jet. It is the first time he's ever flown.
How would you even say that?
Both Randy Weaver and Kevin Harris are charged with murder and conspiracy. After a 3-month trial, Kevin Harris is found not guilty on all charges and released a free man. Randy is found not guilty of all but the original failure to appear charge, for which he serves an additional 6 months in jail.
Yeah, because, you know, obviously he didn't shoot, he didn't even fire his weapon, right? The whole time. So how can they pin it on him? Anything.
If I could, you know,
pretty straightforward.
Do over and then I could read the guy's mind, I wouldn't have sold him those guns.
Right.
But as far as anything else concerned, no, I'd do it again.
Except for your wife dying.
In 1994, the Weaver family files a civil suit, and 1 year later, the federal government settles for $3.1 million.
So you're going to put amount on your wife. So you get 1.5 million, and then you get your son, you get 1.5 million. So that's what they're worth, $1.5 million, right? I don't know. I wouldn't take any money.
Nobody came out of Ruby Ridge looking good. I think to a sense, everybody there was a victim.
We fouled up in front of the entire world, and it should never have happened. And I think it was just a really disappointing day for the FBI.
The FBI later admits to covering up facts during the court case, and the rules of engagement
So they admitted to covering up the facts
are deemed unconstitutional.
And their actions are deemed unconstitutional. You got to be kidding me. I mean, you know, you want to look at this and you want to get everybody the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, you know, by Weaver going to this group and, you know, he needed the money. The $700 was probably, I mean, he only paid $5,000 for the property. So back then, you know, $700 could have got him a long way, and sawing off a couple guns. You know, you think, tell the dude, listen, man, why don't you just saw off the guns and buy your own? You know what I mean? Go buy your own and saw it off yourself. But you just don't think anybody's setting you up like that. Obviously, anything that you meet somebody that you haven't been a lifelong friend with, that you've known, maybe just met for a couple months, and all of a sudden tells you something, a red flag. Listen, anybody out there, if you're involved in something like this and some guy just starts to be your buddy out of the nowhere and says, hey, why don't you do this? I think a couple red flags, if you're smart enough, you get all the nonsense out of the way and realize that this guy's he's setting you up, maybe. But this could all, in hindsight, doesn't look pretty like this could have been all taken care of easily without all this to do, and the FBI looking like jokes. I mean, they do. I mean, everything they do is like this, right? I mean, 99% of everything else, they probably go and don't have issues, but something as stupid as this, sounds like a bunch of egos got in the way, and you're going to listen to us no matter what. And, you know, this guy's scared for his life. Everything he talked about, he was scared of being killed, right? But he didn't die. His daughter didn't die. His other daughters didn't die. But his son and his wife paid the ultimate price for him just saying, hey, you know, whatever, just get this over with on the first day. But if they wanted him, why didn't they just say, listen, instead of videotaping the place and sending the marshals, why didn't they just say, hey, dude, you know, we got a warrant for your arrest, you know? Go up to your door like anybody else. Don't videotape the guy and send, you know, marshals into the woods and watch him. I mean, them guys are the ones that started to screw up. The FBI screwed up. Everybody screwed up. So if you need more ammo against the FBI, I guess this is kind of the city. But this is 30 years ago. People are pissed. Everybody forgets about it. Everybody forgets about the dead. I'm telling you, everybody does. So all this nonsense that happened, you know, are you proud of yourself? And, you know, we're going to war. Nobody's going to war. Okay. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to cover it up. And one side or the other, like we see now. If you're on one side of the aisle, you can do no wrong. If you're on the other side of the aisle, you can do no wrong. The other side says we're innocent. The other side says we're innocent, until somebody actually prosecutes somebody and has evidence that sticks. You know, the rest of it is nonsense, right? So whether you guys, I hope you liked the video. If you would, subscribe, comment, like this video. I'd appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you on the next video. Have a great day. Bye now.
I'm on the run, I've got no alibi for what I've done. Took what you treasure.